Hey everyone, this is Jason Dodge and Phil Schoen with episode 2 of Loki review. Um, People are liking these episodes, Phil.
I think so. Yes, I got some feedback from some colleagues actually at work that said they made a point of telling me how much they liked the first one. So I think that's good.
So let's not disappoint them with the second,
I know.
which is going to be tough to do. So we literally 5 seconds ago just finished watching episode 2. It was my first viewing. Yours, your 10th, I think,
Roughly, yeah.
as I've been joking all day long. So you've I'm going to be fresh with the first opinion. You're going to be fresh with like hot
7 layers of
takes,
detail.
and you've seen videos and like a little bit of the backstory. So I think we got two good opinions that kind of mesh well with each other. And I've got, you said you had 3 or 4 pages of notes.
Yep.
I've got various notes as well. I kind of don't know where to start. So overall impressions of the episode. We'll start there.
So overall, go ahead. Yeah, you go
No,
first.
no, please, you go first.
So my overall impression is I really liked it. There's a lot of interesting dialogue and just sort of like
Yes,
philosophical discussions and stuff. Especially in the first half. I think obviously
very,
more action in the second half.
very dialogue heavy.
Yeah. The one thing though I can definitely say is, at least by the end of it, stuff happened. I know when we did this for, say, Mandalorian, it sometimes felt there were some episodes like, all right, that was kind of a
Monster of the week.
yeah, much of the week kind of holdover episode, not too much with the plot. Like we're 2 episodes in, it feels like there's been a lot of plot happening as well.
Yes.
So
Well, what I liked about this episode, nothing happened and everything happened,
yeah.
right? So it's like kind of like you spent the first, how long was this episode? About 40-ish minutes or so?
About 50 almost. I mean, maybe
Almost
with the
50?
credits it's 50, yeah.
So we spent a majority of the episode with them just talking and hypothesizing and nothing happens, right? But it's a very mental episode too.
Yes.
Because as nothing happens on screen, you have two great actors kind of riffing on each other, which is entertaining in its own right.
Mhm.
And we're going to go through our notes kind of chronologically a little bit, but you got the reveal at the end who the other Loki is, Lady Loki. That I knew it was going to show up because that's what everybody was thinking. And Phil, you've done a good job of sharing with Screen Crush and all the other good YouTube channels that get, like you said, they get paid money to do this because they get millions of views, and it's not our job to decipher all this stuff because we are not experts in the MCU, but we are experts in what we like. If that makes sense. So let's start at the beginning. Again, the show immediately kicks off with excellent music, right? I'm reminded I like the music. There's really cool animation styles from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it just kind of puts you in a mood.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It sets the stage. It's kind of this old retro analog world, but not. And then once you kind of get through the intro a little bit, it starts off with the Ren Fair with the abduction of a TVA agent.
Right.
So what were your, like, just in that scene alone, outside some awesome music in a fight scene that like I totally dug, but like I'll throw this at you. We mentioned this while we were watching it. The TVA agents got their butts kicked.
Yes.
Pretty easily.
Yeah, by one Loki variant, and it seems like every time it's not even close, right? Like the Loki variant is way ahead of them and sets them up and has everything kind of planned out. So, even had, I think, the speakers and the music to play, right, to announce that there's going to be a battle and stuff. So it's like, was just in wait for them.
Right. I mean, like, you kind of get the sense that these TVA agents should be like crack fighter teams, like SWAT teams, like they know what they're doing, but they just come off as buffoons. And I think that might be one of the, okay, it could be a brilliant, and I'm gonna lean towards that they know what they're doing, obviously, because they're writing, what happens at the end of this next series, right? So my impressions are like, and Loki kind of talked about this later in the episode, where they're, what did he say, like they're drunk with power, right? They're just walking into a trap type of thing. You have these TV agents who think they're crack agents and they're just walking into these situations, and they're finally up against somebody that knows what they're doing, and all of a sudden they fail.
Yeah. Well, so there's definitely a lot of metaphors for the TVA and just kind of like large corporations or governments or something that are kind of in power. They have the power and they have all their regulations, and here's the way you follow the code. And when they're coming up against somebody who kind of thinks differently, kind of doesn't necessarily follow the rules, they're their guidelines kind of fall apart and they're not able to handle it.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing, though. I mean, at the point of the fights, they're not even trained to fight well. Right. Like they had a TVA agent. He kind of knelt down at the end of that one fight scene at the very beginning to check on his counterpart. And he's down on his knees. He's not in a fighting stance. He's not looking around. And then he's like turns around, right? He's still like on his one knee.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets like killed.
Yeah.
Like if you're trained even a little bit in like tactics, right? Like, you know that you're not supposed to get down and like turn your back on people. Like keep your head on a swivel and, be aware of your situation. Like they all look like rank amateurs.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is just to create suspense in the scene, or I don't know if this is purposeful. Like you could just start seeing mistakes of the TVA over and over because there really are bumbling idiots, and like against a normal person or a normal variant, right? Or a not so powerful variant or an accidental variant, they know what happens, so they can easily just take care of it.
Yeah.
But once they come up against somebody that knows how to fight, they prove to be useless.
But it seems like they have their techniques. Like even when they got Loki in the first episode, it's like they came up, they slapped the thing on him, and that was kind of it. But when it doesn't go according to plan, they're not really trained to fight.
Right. I don't know if that's purposely done. I think it can be because it kind of leads to some of the other kind of themes in the show.
Yep.
So one of the other details I picked up going on is missed minutes in the hologram scene.
Yep.
I kind of like that. Just not that it means anything. I just kind of cool. I think it was fun. I like her and her animation. I would like
she's a good character.
I'd like to have her a poster of her propaganda on the wall. I think that'd be kind of neat. And then I kind of like the scene. Again, this is a scene where Loki calls the TVA drunk with power and all this other stuff. You got to see Loki in a tie, his current variation.
Mm-hmm.
You got to see Hulk Loki. You got to see like a fat kind of Loki and a Loki kind of Thorish version of a warrior.
Yeah.
And then after all that stuff, he started talking about different types of magic.
Yeah.
What did you pick up on that scene?
So one of the big things I took from that scene was just how the TVA sort of looks down on variants. They made him wear the jacket with the label on it, and kind of just we're trying to show how, I think that she called them a cosmic mistake and stuff, and just how they kind of think they're
very sophomoric.
Yeah, they're just like they're better than these variants, whatever. And meanwhile, he's like correcting them on like, they're saying, well, this person has this power and blah blah, and he's like, no, that's not what that power is. I got to clarify this for you. Like, you think you're the experts on everything, and you don't even know one of the specifics about the power of this person you're trying to take down. So I think it was kind of to show that play of, again, how this corporation or whatever thinks they're always right and are conceited and that sort of thing. And that's why he compared them to the gods of Asgard that thought they were just all powerful and all right and didn't have to think too much.
So then after this whole sequence, Agent Mobius? Detective Mobius? I keep forgetting.
What do they have the name for? Because it's not. I know the hunters are the people that go out, and then he's what was the term she called? Whatever it is, like an agent. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Mobius. We're just gonna say Mobius.
Yeah.
Mobius. He is in the judge's office, chambers, apartment. I don't know what it is. Yeah. We get to see really cool trophies. Again, they're all Earth-based trophies, which I thought was interesting. She had a really interesting statement. So they go back and forth. How can you trust him? I can't trust him. Blah 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 blah. But they made a mention where the timekeepers are monitoring every aspect of this case. And the judge says that she's never seen the timekeepers do this before.
Yep.
Right. So
that never has worked up about something, and that they're really focused on catching this variant. Yeah.
This kind of discussion or use of words is I've seen in plenty of other movies where it's like it's just one middle manager covering for the man behind the curtain, right? This is a total Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Because I think we're going to find out that the timekeepers either don't exist, they're long dead, or they're not actual beings. They're just like a device that was created, and then a giant bureaucracy was created to kind of mask who they really were.
Yeah.
Or they were just a bunch of idiots that managed to do something and then started a whole thing and somebody built something over it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I know, if it plays off the comics, so the character that the judge is Ravonna Renslayer, who's in the comics, and she has, and I brought up this character last time, Kang the Conqueror, and she has a long twisted relationship with him, and he's one of the timekeepers, and so it could be that she's like covering for him, speaking for him, that sort of thing. So I
It
mean,
just
I don't know how deep they're going to get into it, but there's definitely more to the relationship between her and those timekeepers, and I think your Wizard of Oz analogy is pretty fitting. That something's going on behind that curtain, and she's trying to cover for it.
right. There's just to me, it's just like there's not three omnipotent beings that know what they're
Yeah.
doing, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we even got the sense of that with the story, right? You have these three timekeepers that are protecting their own butts by
Yeah.
making sure this timeline stays secure so they don't get beaten. But I think whether I mean the whole Kang theory, and I've read online. I think that's really cool, and I think once we get to the Fantastic Four in like 3 years, I think there's like some relationships there that are really cool. So you can dive into that on
Mm-hmm.
your own, folks out there. But that being said, to me, it seems like she's just covering for another long con.
Yeah.
That's all it is, right? So I think it's going to be the TVA is going to be a paper tiger that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
basically torn apart by like our friend Loki and deviant Loki, if you want to, Lady Loki or whatever you want to call it.
And I think also Mobius. I think if you listen to his conversation with her, and he's kind of and she's kind of saying, about Loki, like, why would he change? He's always the bad guy. And Mobius is like, well, maybe he wants to mix it up. Maybe, get tired of playing the same part. And I kind of wonder if he's talking about himself as well, that he's tired of playing
Oh,
like this kind
yes.
of desk guy, whatever. And, sometimes maybe he'd like to do something a little more fun, like, maybe ride a jet ski or something like that he feels kind of stuck. And dealing with Loki brings some excitement into his life. So I think it might be interesting. That relationship obviously is going to be interesting too.
So I mean, like, if we scripted the show and I did some research and thought, like, there's a movie that I'm thinking of where you have this character that follows the rules, follows the routine, does what he's told. He acts his part constantly,
Mm-hmm.
and then he finally gets a taste of outside the routine.
Yeah.
Because you can see everybody else in that show does their job, does it whatever they're supposed to do. The woman that was at the library or record keeper or whatever,
Yeah.
she completely ignored him until she rang the bell, and the ringing the bell, or Loki rang the bell, and ringing the bell triggered her function to say, "How can I help you?" And then she helps the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mobius is the only one that seems to be going outside the norm. Right, like so,
or at least entertaining it, right? And I think that goes back to all the conversations he's having with Loki, comparing, like basically fatalism, how everything is predetermined, and free will, and how does that mix together what is right, and how is belief and faith what he believes is true. So it obviously got kind of deep at points, but I think that's sort of the central crux of this whole show.
Well, I mean, he is now deviating,
right?
Right, deviating from your normal agent like behavior, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's what makes it interesting. I like the whole apocalypse theory. That's kind of neat. The just hiding where all this cosmic nexus energy. I like how they're using nexus more and more because that's going to tie into Wanda as being a nexus being. So they're starting to lay some language there. I like that. And they started talking about free will, and I love time shows or movie shows, whatever, where it's just like it just messes with your head a little bit because anything can happen. So, time is a circle, the whole thing, the timeline, you can view any part of the timeline. It always happens. It always repeats. TVA doesn't, because it just keeps going on. So they're kind of outside the timeline. They're viewing it. And then they talk about the TVA free will. So that kind of starts triggering just what you said before that about, is Mobius going to do something weird? And then, is that, well, here's a question. I'm going to jump out of this episode a little bit. Is Loki going to lead more into establishing things for like the Eternals and stuff that's coming up? Or is it basically going to skip over the Eternals and go into like Doctor Strange 2?
Yeah, I don't know where the Eternals fits into this. Is it that something happens and that's what awakens the Eternals, or not awakens, but supposedly there's a plot line that they've had their memories wiped and something breaks them out of it. So maybe that's what this is. Something, messing with the timeline wakes them out of it. So I don't know how the Eternals fits into everything. I think this definitely is going to fit into Doctor Strange 2 and the multiverse of madness. I mean, they're clearly setting up having multiverses and things like that. So,
And the new Spider-Man movie.
yeah, the Spider-Man movie supposedly is going to have different variants of Spider-Man in it and stuff like that. So I think it's leaning into that, but I guess we'll have to see.
Okay, before we get into like basically Alabama, the last 5 minutes of the episode, were there any other points that you wanted to bring up in your notes?
Let me see. So I think that was we kind of got so far that we haven't touched on. I guess the last thing that I might mention was there were some good Easter eggs in some of the apocalypses that he was looking at, specifically when he looked at Ragnarok and the destruction of Asgard. So one thing that was noted was in the file when they talked about the refugees that did escape, they were officially listed as the Revengers, which I know was kind of what Thor said that he was calling themselves and stuff like that. We're the Revengers, and that's what they're officially listed as. And then one thing we noted was that they have different classes for how bad the apocalypses are, and Ragnarok was noted as a Class 7 apocalypse. And now that we're getting into the next part, when they go to try to capture this Loki variant, and they find this location in Alabama where they're able to cross-check the kablooey gum with an event, that one was noted as a Class 10 apocalypse. So, 3 classes worse than
Not
Ragnarok.
as bad as Ragnarok, a giant demon blowing it up with
a giant sword or whatever he has.
God of death, right? Fighting each other. Our goddess of death. Okay, so Alabama shows up. There's a couple things that kind of, you say you have a lot of notes with this, so I'll let you kind of key into this a little bit. But here's a couple things. We talked about this as we were watching it. Loki doesn't seem like a greatest fighter as he was.
Yeah.
Like he was getting like thrown around. Obviously, the variant Loki, which obviously is now a woman that we saw at the very last minute, she has this like possession magic.
Yeah, we could transfer her essence or somehow take over. Yeah.
The Loki we know and love doesn't have that. He's mostly like illusions and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I'm going to call him our Loki, right? Versus, right? Let's call him our Loki because that's why we love him, because we've known him forever. Mm-hmm. Do you think he will be able to figure out how to do possession magic like that? I'm calling it possession magic. I don't know if it has another name.
I don't know. I mean, I think when we had that other scene where they went through the different Lokis, like some of them were huge and some I think just each variant has different powers. So maybe he could learn it, but I think it's more just everybody.
It's a simple explanation. Yeah. I'll take that. That doesn't hurt my brain as much then. Okay, so they're kicking around each other. They have super strength. Makes sense if she's taking over each one of their bodies with her essence, and they're both quote unquote godly. Well, here's the question: if the timeline is sacred, how did this Lady Loki become a deviant? Like, where would she have come from? Are we going to find that out?
I mean, I assume they'll explain that, where was the Nexus event that had the branch, and then they must have used, one of the reset devices to clip that branch, but she must have escaped from it. Similar to how our Loki, right? Like, he was in that branch, the TVA took him, and then they used the reset device to kind of clean up that branch, but he was still kind of outside the timeline. So I'm assuming it'll be something similar where she had a branch and then either went with the TVA or escaped them or something like that, so that she wasn't impacted by the reset device.
That's going to be an interesting story to tell, and we'll find that out.
Yeah, I assume we'll find out like how she
in future episodes. Yeah. Because Loki went after her, right? He went through the same gate, so they're going to have probably a better discussion next episode. Like, he's going to chase her down and say, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And where he was trying to recruit her to be his lieutenant, maybe there's some role swapping where he's going to pretend to be her lieutenant and to then betray her, stab her in the back, because he's only stabbed people in the back 50 times, right? But here's the thing. So the final scene in the episode is she sets all these bombs up, and they all trigger and go to different parts of time zones and create chaos,
Yeah,
right?
somehow she transported them to the sacred timeline, whether that meant, because I know with the one agent that she had captured, when they find her, she said she gave up the location of the timekeepers. So I don't know if this means that she transported them right to where the timekeepers were or where they're holding the sacred timeline, whatever it was, but somehow they went and are creating all sorts of branches all at once.
So we need to go. We kind of pause it at the end of the show, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be able to tell us exactly what all these dates were. But on the timekeeper device, it shows like all the different points of time these things are going to, and it's like New York and China and Finland and specific years and dates and times. I'm sure you guys could go out there and find out what each one of those are, or at least guess of what each one of those places are. So search YouTube for the smarter people that are doing all the grunt work and find out those answers. And Phil, if you find one that does it well, I'm sure you'll tweet it out for everybody.
We'll look at.
But that being said, the whole thing I don't really get is if she really wanted to do all these bombs, why did she just like wait for everybody to show up and then blow them up? Is it that was the time she always was going to do that and it was just got interrupted? Or does she have to do them all at I guess she has to do them all at once so she speaks chaos.
She definitely had to, this was part of her plan to capture all of these and I guess just, to make it dramatic in the show, the time for her to set it off happened to be, or maybe when she realized they were close to getting her, she was like, all right, I got enough. I got to do it now before it's too late to set all this off. So I don't think she did it to catch, to get them in the explosion. I think it was just, this was the time she had to do it.
Okay, fair enough. And that's fine. That's as good as explanation as anything. So where do we see, we're going to start, we'll close out the show now, is what are we going to see for the next episode? So she created 20 variants, whatever, assuming a bomb going off at any point in the sacred timeline is going to create a Nexus event. I guess that's just the thing, right?
Right.
Is she's just basically going to create all these things. There's probably going to be red lines somewhere, right? We're probably going to see them trying to put out some fires. They're going to get some of them, and there's going to be maybe 1, maybe 4 timelines that get past the red line, right? Yeah. We were going to see what happens once that line hits past the red line.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
We've been leading it. It's just a matter of how many.
I think so, yeah.
So does the show then turn into trying to repair the timeline / get Lady Loki and then kind of fix everything? Or is it just going to be like craziness where things just get out of hand and the show ends at the end of the run with like establishing new characters, establishing the background origin story of the next Doctor Strange movie, and it just kind of it's left unresolved, or maybe just like the TVA gets abolished type of thing. Yeah. And that's the resolution of the show. Like, oh my God, it's the start of the next big problem. Maybe.
I think so. Or either just the new situation for the MCU, right? There is no longer one sacred timeline. There's however many, and they're able to coexist or not coexist or interfere with each other. But that's sort of the new reality.
Which allows us to bring in any kind of superhero we want with different actors.
Exactly.
And not paying them as much. God bless Disney. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for listening. Every single week, we're going to be doing Loki. Maybe the new Pixar movie this weekend. I don't know. Maybe we'll review it the weekend after. Or at least maybe we'll do a review on our weekly show.
Yep.
Yeah, I think. That being said, catch us this week with the new DBC Expedition. A little tease for our weekly show this week. New DBC Expedition on Project Gemini, all relating to Epcot. So Google that. You can find out a little bit about it. We're going to put our own little spin on it, do a little bit of research, and talk to you about it. And then that being said, have a good week, everybody. We'll see you next week with episode 3 of Loki.
Take care, everyone.